Morning. It's balmy, minus 10 degrees Celsius here in Kitchener, Ontario. I'm doing probably about a 20-kilometer loop today. I've got the new Ultra Lone Peak 3.5, so I'm giving them their test. I guess with the added benefit, I get to test the winter gear as well. I think it's supposed to go down to like minus 17 degrees Celsius tonight, so guarantee I'm not sleeping outside, but this should give definitely a good perspective on the cold hiking, if nothing else. The trail today is probably a little less scenic than the past couple of videos. It runs through town, so you get the river on one side, but then you get the industrial buildings on the other. So for your visual distraction, if nothing else, I will try to pepper the occasional photo periodically through the course of this video. Squirrel! See what I did there? You're welcome. So in today's video, I want to talk about a subject I actually haven't seen a lot of in these prep videos, at least from the holistic sense. And that's my Internet of Things. All things electronic. Technology potpourri, if you will, be it devices or apps or programs, and its correlation to my upcoming thru hike. So similar to my gear video, I don't present this to be some expert that you should emulate, based on my all of 15 minutes of experience. But rather, I'm intrigued by the psychological aspect of the hike, so I want to give you some insight into my headspace and my planning. Essentially what I anticipate the use of a gear or a tool is in correlation to the hike. I think the interesting thing is actually going to be looking at it mid-hike, post-hike, and did that gear or tool be utilized as I expected it? If my hike evolved, did it also evolve in lockstep? Okay, so I'm rambling a bit. In all reality, by the time I hit the trail, I'm not going to care about any of this stuff. My mind will be solely and only focused on the flavor of Pop-Tart at the next resupply point. Welcome to my hikeification. So the impetus of today's video actually came from an article on Whiteblaze. And for those of you who don't know what Whiteblaze is, it's essentially an internet forum for hikers. And it has a lot of great information on the Appalachian Trail. Albeit, like any internet forum, you kind of enter at your own risk. Actually, Whiteblaze and Facebook groups probably could be a good video unto itself, but it might take somebody with a little more tact than me to deliver it. Anyway, this brave soul posted a question on whether his Nokia flip phone would be sufficient for the trail. And what followed was an onslaught from two very diametrically opposed camps. On one side we have, let's call them the nature purists, who definitely weighed in as any electronics is almost paramount to sacrilege. It tarnishes the sanctity of the trail. And on the other end you had the group saying, if you're not fully connected with multiple devices at any given time, etc., 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 blah, 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 you're living in the dark ages. And there was no middle ground. Now, not to stereotype, but there may have been a slight generational bias between the two camps. Okay, I completely just stereotyped. My bad. But anyway, it got me to thinking as to what my perspective on technology was as it relates to my thru hike. Where would I sit in that technology paradigm? Let's roll some B-clip. Spoiler alert, I was actually shocked how much technology I currently use and expect to carry on the trail, in addition to how much extra I expect to augment to make my trail experience a full one. You know you're in Canada when so things you don't expect to run across on the trail. Weird. Okay, let's talk about devices. Now, I went through this in my gear review list, but to recap, I'm taking my iPhone with camera, my iPad, my mirrorless camera with lens and microphone. I've also decided to take my Garmin Fenix 5 watch. In terms of logistics, when I get to the United States, I'll purchase a pay-as-you-go data plan for my phone. Probably from Verizon, as I do hear that provides pretty much the best coverage along the course of the Appalachian Trail. Everything else will be Wi-Fi. I did consider roaming, but because I'm from Canada, that does get a little expensive, especially over a 6-month period. The nice thing is, once you get past the devices, the more tools you add on doesn't add up any more weight. Which, you know, I've got that going for me for all you that are counting grams. But what it does add up to is the potential to increase the level of distraction. So a little disclaimer, I have a lot of tools. And I actually do think they are going to be invaluable to me. But that doesn't infer a frequency of use. I actually fully expect a predominance of my hike to be device-free, camera notwithstanding. I don't want to be the guy that's walking down the trail with his head in his phone. I don't want to negate social interactions because I'm too busy checking Facebook. And I definitely don't want to be the guy whose first impulse when you get to a good view is to pull out the camera versus taking it in. That's my intent. We'll see where reality hits when I hit the trail. So let's talk about data storage. I have a feeling I'm going to need a lot of storage. Mostly because, well, I intend on vlogging. And the nature of the vlogging that I plan on doing is more scene-based, which means a greater likelihood that I need to retain clips and B-roll to be used in later videos. That's different than kind of the once and done post and delete style of almost daily journaling that is in the other camp. Obviously there's a lot of gray in between. I also expect to do video in 64 frames per second and 4K, so it's going to be a bit of a data hog. For storage, I've actually maxed out my iPad and iPhone respectively. I think it's got like 560 and 250 gigs respectively. I will also be using SD cards. I have 3 128 gig SD cards, and I will mail them home once they get full, and they'll essentially be my extra redundant backup for my material. And then there's storage from the cloud. So I have iCloud, but it's a non-pay version, and it's great for just transferring of videos between devices. But my primary backup is Dropbox. And I use Dropbox Pro. And that gives me a terabyte of storage, which should be more than I would ever need. Now, Dropbox, in terms of kind of the cloud ecosystem, isn't as great as iCloud or Google Drive, but I do like the way Dropbox allows you to manipulate your files. It also allows you to change your files on your mobile devices offline. I think that's going to be invaluable. I will also use that SD card to iPad input device I showed during my gear video to transfer information between devices, as well as Apple's AirDrop to move stuff between the iPad and the iPhone. Essentially, the iPhone is going to be for pictures and the iPad is for video. In terms of creating those pretty pictures, I won't get into the techniques of videography or photography, but from a technology vantage, I will be using an app called Fuji Connect. And essentially this allows the remote control of a lot of my camera functions. So I essentially then can get in front of the camera and still have direct input into essentially what the ultimate output is going to be. I'm still in the learning curve for it, as historically I've always been behind the camera. So this is somewhat new. Once you have the picture, I will edit it on Lightroom for mobile. I've always historically used that and it more than meets my needs. There may be the occasional picture that when I get home from the trek, I'll use Photoshop, but that's only where I want to print in a very large scale. For video, I will be primarily using iMovie. I'm very new to this videography component, as evident by my first couple videos and this current shaky clip. But I have been using iMovie on my computer, and it has all the functionality I would need. When I'm on the trail, however, I'll be using iMovie for iPad, and it's got a little less functionality, but for the majority of the clips where you're essentially just trimming, combining, maybe putting a title or two and a little bit of music underneath, it should be more than sufficient. And the benefit, it's got a dead easy and intuitive workflow from everything I can see. For those occasional movies and videos where I want to express a bit more of a cinematic vision, or where, let's be honest, I've completely screwed up the videography and I need to fix it, I will be using LumaVision and Lumina FX. I'm still trying to figure these out, but luckily I've got 90 days till we start. But the amount of control you have on editing and the output is pretty remarkable from everything I've seen, so I'll be using that as well. Finally, once produced, my videos will get posted to YouTube and my pictures will get posted to Instagram. I still have to create the Instagram account under the same name as this YouTube channel. Which brings us to social media. And I will be using YouTube and Instagram as my primary source to reach the public audience, as well as interact with everyone that I'm privileged enough to have follow me. I will also be using Facebook, but my Facebook's private, so that's really more for my friends and acquaintances, essentially, people I actually know, where I want to update them en masse or follow along so I'm aware of what's going on in their lives. I will admit my Facebook frequency has been infrequent at best, and I have taken a hiatus on posting for the last little while, so I'll have to see whether I rev that up a little bit before I start. The majority of my interactions, though, are one-on-ones, and I do that through messaging. And I've been lucky enough to live in many different countries over these past 20 years, and as such I have friends and acquaintances all over the world. And the interesting thing when you travel is you're going to find that different countries tend to lean towards different programs when it comes to messaging. And so I have a whole host of different platforms that I use to connect with my friends and acquaintances. Obviously the Apple Messenger is my primary, but I use Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, WeChat, Yahoo Messenger. I'll use Viber and Skype or FaceTime for video. Majority of them very infrequently, but they're all in my technology bundle. Of course, I will also use my phone as, well, a phone. And my go-to email is my Gmail account. And of course, the phone, email, messaging is also integral for those trail to town logistics, whether phoning for a shuttle, making a hotel reservation. That brings me to what I'll call the more trail-oriented technology. And first and foremost, I will be using gut hooks. And everything I've seen from gut hooks, it is a go-to resource for maps, waters, trail notes, etc. Follow Bigfoot actually did a really good video on the attributes of gut hooks. I encourage you to kind of search that out. I would link it if I actually knew how. Unfortunately, I don't. Ironic in a video about technology that it becomes abundantly clear that I am a technology neophyte. I will, however, also use AWOL's AT guide on my iPhone with a redundant copy on my iPad. Similarly, a very beneficial tool on the logistics of the trail and the path ahead. A little less AT specific is my compass on both my watch and my iPhone, as well as my GPS and altimeter on my watch. This mostly sits in the nice to know camp or the hope I don't need to know camp. Okay, completely unrelated to the topic, I just want to say, how cool are these? Yes, nature, the trail, my fellow hikers will all be my entertainment. However, I have no doubt there will be days when you just want to zone out and get from A to B. If my shakedown hikes have taught me anything, it's those never-ending days of rain. Sometimes I want a little distraction. This is where my entertainment comes in. For music, I have my iTunes as well as my Spotify playlists. I'll be listening to podcasts. Currently on that list is Dirtbag Diaries, the Pox and the Puss podcast, The Trail Show, Hang Your Own Hang, and TED Talks. I am sure there will be others before we start the hike. I am also a voracious reader in non-trail life, so I may also look into audiobooks. However, my actual library is on iBooks for those early evenings, 0 days, including a couple books that I would categorize as my go-to novels. I may download a few more before I depart. And I guess finally there's Netflix, which hopefully this will be the exception versus the rule. Next is what I'll call my miscellaneous category. I actually like to take notes. You may not believe this, but my rambling on these videos is actually planned a little bit in advance before I launch into these diatribes. And to that end, I use Pages on my iPad. And I've actually got a keyboard connected to it to make it easier for the metaphorical pen to paper. Obviously, there's some other functionality on my phone that I'll use. There's an alarm clock that I use on vibrate. Hopefully I won't actually need that and I'll wake up with the sun, but who knows. You've got your flashlight, I think I mentioned your compass, random odds and ends. Next is my Garmin Connect app, which essentially tracks all the health data from my phone. And so far, it's just some neat information. I may do a whole nother video on that in and of itself. So I'm sure you'll be waiting by the edge of your seat for that. There's my Amazon app for any of that ad hoc gear replacement while you're in the middle of the trail. And finally, there's just your plain old vanilla internet where you want to look things up. You know, what does poison ivy look like? Or WebMD to self-diagnose that rash when you failed to look up what poison ivy looks like. And finally, while I have nothing but respect for those people that are able to leave life behind for their hike. I'm a grown-ass adult that have responsibilities that I need to attend to. I've got a mortgage that needs to be paid. I've got non-trail bills. So I have banking apps and provider apps to ensure I can transfer money, etc. between them. I've got an investment portfolio. I may want to check the nature of my stocks every once in a blue moon. Coming from Canada, my out-of-country benefits, my insurance, is on an app on my iPhone. I have to pay my taxes. Gotta pay my visa. Technology enables one to do all that from afar. So yeah, I sit squarely in the technology camp. One does have to wonder how Grandma Gatewood ever completed her thru hike in the absence of all these tools. Being completely serious, I have nothing but the utmost admiration and respect to those people that can leave all this stuff behind, that can go 6 months without the technology. But realistically, that's just not me. My challenge is to ensure that these tools, this technology, serves to augment and not detract from my hike. I do make one commitment though. I guarantee you I will not use Snapchat or Twitter. Life is just a little too short. Till next time, hike on. Of that gear follow what I expected? Or did the hike itself change, and in which case did the gear or tool also change in lockstep? And there's a plane going over by, so